everyone. My name is Madhu, and I'm here on behalf of Adventure Tripper. Sorry about the last time, guys, for the interruption. As promised, we are re-recording this webinar. And for those of you who don't know about Adventure Tripper, we are an online platform for active adventures where we connect the folks with local guides all around the world. This way, we essentially eliminate the middleman, keeping the prices more affordable and accessible to everyone. And today we have two guest speakers with us. The first speaker is Carl, and the second speaker is Gunjan. Carl is a fitness instructor with a premium club in Washington State, and Gunjan is an expert climber and a multi-sport activist. She's been climbing, running, ultra runner, and she's been a great inspiration in our community. So I will leave it to Gunjan to introduce herself.
Hey, yeah, I am Gunjan. I am a recreational climber, recreational runner. I'm a full-time, I work in the software industry full-time, but I got into hiking back in 2016. From hiking, I discovered the volcanoes in Washington. From the volcanoes, I discovered the burgers in Washington, other Cascadian volcanoes. So slowly, I started climbing some of them. During this time, I learned how to ski. I was walking down Camure once, and walking down Camure is a slog, and there was someone who just skied down, and that made me think, no, I don't want to climb down mountains anymore. I want to ski. So I learned how to ski. So over the last 8 years, I've kind of learned a lot of different skills just to enjoy my time outdoors. Yeah.
That's awesome, Gunjan. Carl, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Carl Swedberg. I'm a climber as well, recreational climber. I've been climbing for about 20 years or so now. I started with a charity climb with Mountaineer with a Microsoft client way back when in 2003. Eventually, a couple of years later, joined the Seattle Mountaineers Climbing Club, which set a foundation for knowledge, whether it's ropes and how to belay and climbing, additional climbing techniques and just experience, which was a great opportunity, and really enjoyed that. I eventually did the intermediate climbing class as well. There's no advanced climbing class for the mountaineers. It just goes into climb leader after that. But I did graduate the intermediate climbing, and then basically started doing my own climbing, and actually very similar to Gunjan as far as I used to do lots of conditioning hikes up to Camp Muir, and I got tired of doing that slog too, so I learned how to ski as an adult as well, and I absolutely love skiing, and introduced my kids to it pretty early on, and legitimately got out skied by my son a few weeks back up in Sun Valley, and it was kind of a humbling moment. But professionally, I work at Pro Sports Club. I am the fitness director there, so I oversee all our personal trainers and teach a class called mountain conditioning. Still do a little personal training myself, but mountain conditioning is one of my favorite times during the week. Every Tuesday and Thursday early in the morning, take about 30 to 40 people through a pretty diverse workout. I've never taught the same class twice. A lot of muscular endurance work, as well as a little bit of cardio. And then also I kind of tend to say that it's a little bit of psychological warfare, getting people to do things they don't think they can do, and hopefully getting them successful with that. It's tons of fun, lots of laughs as well. Yeah, so train lots of people for Mount Rainier and other mountains in the area. I've got actually one person arriving at Everest Base Camp any day now who's going to be attempting a summit of Everest, and then hopefully doing a double and hitting Lhotse as well. So it's a pretty exciting time for him, and hopefully being successful.
That's amazing, Carl. Thank you. So I have a few questions for you guys, and I'll start with Carl first. So if someone is like a advanced hiker, how do you think they should prepare to get into mountaineering, like physical conditioning wise?
So basically doing more is the general aspect of things. So starting to progress those hikes, is advanced hiking can have various definitions, but basically if an advanced hiker is going up in Seattle terms, doing like Mount Si or Granite Mountain in a few hours up and down. So for Mount Si, which is about 3,000 feet of elevation gain, about 4 miles one way, you're going to be gaining about 1,000 feet per hour, and you want to be doing about 1,000 feet per hour in a good form. As far as you shouldn't be dying, you should be feeling pretty. You might be working hard, but able to do it without a lot of super difficult aspects, and then progressing that into maybe steeper climbs, maybe getting into some scrambling, which is more technical and there's more injury risk. So scrambling means sometimes you're going to be doing potentially using your hands for a couple of things, climbing up over a boulder or whatever obstacle you have. But there's definitely more risk involved with that because you don't want to fall. It's usually no fall zones. And then distance is the other thing that's going to be a big thing to do. And that distance is going to translate into the mountains, where if you're doing a climb, let's say a Mount Rainier or something of that nature, you're not just going out for a few hours and back. You're going to be out for 12 plus hours usually for a summit bid, and that's going to wear on your body. It's a different experience than going up for a shorter hike. So going for longer hikes with more elevation gain and loss, packing more weight at some point. I tell people that I usually have people for training hikes pack weight up, but not a lot down. So take a whole bunch of extra water, dump the excess water at the top, because you're going to get plenty of impact coming down, in my opinion. Versus just really beating yourself up on the way down, where the impact is going to be magnified anyway, just with your body weight or a little bit of a pack. So dump the water at the top and then come down and comfortable and enjoy that. I guess that's the nuts and bolts of it. And then the other conditioning you're going to do around that hiking too. So depends on the person, but I'm assuming somebody who's an avid hiker and an advanced hiker, they're going to do some workouts on their own in a gym environment at home as well, and making sure those are complete and thorough, and also getting some strength training in if they're not doing that is going to be helpful. And then it's obviously learning the skills for mountaineering too. So if you have the opportunity to learn from a program like the Mountaineers or Go Alps or some of the other things, Washington Climbers Association, I think. Shoot, I'm blanking on it. Anyway,
yeah.
So anyway, but there's a lot of different options, and that's one of the things that would be good.
Yeah. Thank you, Carl. And Gunjan, like, if you could tell us something about like how to learn the technical skills, since you have learned it from scratch, right? Like, how did you start about it?
So when I started, I did not learn things the right way initially. The best thing that happened with me when I started was finding a group that was interested in the same thing as me. And we learned a lot of the initial skills through some mentors. There was a group, still a group, very active group of women called PNW Outdoor Women on Facebook. That's the group I started with. There were a few mentors who helped, teach me, like, I went up Mount St. Helens with that group. Not that I had all the skills when I first did it. I learned on the mountain, which is not necessarily the best thing to do. But that exposure kind of taught me two things. One, that I enjoyed it. Two, that I needed more skills to be able to do that again and again and again. Mm-hmm. Initially, when I started out, I started with a guided Rainier climb, as I did it with the Asha group. That group helped me a ton, right? Because a lot of my initial snow skills, just learning how to, self-arrest, etc., I learned from the volunteers in Asha. But that was not enough to really go unguided. So I followed up with, over the years, I've taken a couple of different mountaineering classes. I've taken the initial crevasse rescue classes, and then that was with Miyar Sports. And then once I started skiing, I took the Mountaineers ski mountaineering course. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I also took a ski glacier travel course with Pro Sports in North Bend. So over the years, like, I've been, wherever I get an opportunity, I do take these courses because you have to keep supplementing. And it's not that you take the course once and it's done. Pretty much every time, like the spring comes, some of these skills need to be reviewed. Like before I go out climbing with anyone, we tend to get together at Merrymoor, review our crevasse rescue skills, etc. So it's kind of just relearning a lot of what I've learned over the years now.
Yeah, just practicing the skills to make sure you are like have it in hand and be able to use if necessary.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, do you think how big was the role of community? Like, did it make a difference?
It did. I think what is really important is finding, even if the people that you're going out with don't have the skills that you want, that you need, but having a group of people who want to do the same thing so that you can learn. Like pretty much all the classes I've taken were semi-private, like, with 4 or 5 of us getting together and taking those classes together, both with Miyar and when we did with Pro Sports, we had a women's only 3 women with 1 guide who went up Mount Baker to learn how to ski around crevasses, etc., and how to do crevasse rescue on skis, etc. So I think having a group that wants to learn with you, wants to do the same things as you, kind of helps, right? You're not doing everything alone.
Yeah.
And frankly, I would have never, I think, got into climbing if that initially, like the PNW Outdoor Women group, did not really take me in. Like, finding finding the right people, finding, women who taught me, like, there are these
same passion, right? Like,
yes,
exactly.
and so community is everything, because before that, and I still have that reminder. I used to post pictures from Washington hiker and climbers on my Facebook group to my friends. Does anyone want to go for this hike? None of my friends
I
at that
had the
time.
same issue. None of my friend circle had any people who are interested in climbing or hiking. Hardly 1 or 2, and that too, they wouldn't go for anything harder. So that having a community made a huge difference for
So
me.
I had to, I think making new friends, like, new friends was important for me. And I think that same thing probably happened with you.
Yeah, that's right. So for me, like Adventure for Everyone, like the community with Adventure Tripper, that also played a role because a lot of the people that I hike with and climb with from now, I got those friendships from the community. So that was my main go-to community because I knew a lot of them. Somehow we had some common connections. So yeah, for me, initially to begin with, that played a big role. Like one of my all-time, like she's been my partner, my Raji's, like she's also with Adventure Tripper. So we connected through the Adventure for Everyone. So that is another community you guys can look out for. And so to Carl, like, what do you think, where should someone start with conditioning as in physical training apart from hiking? What tips do you say? Like, where should they start?
So it obviously depends on what resources you have available and like last time we did this, I also did the precursor. Everything's at your own risk. So I'm just going to say that one more time. So for those who didn't do the last one, but make sure that you do things safely, but that's all on you. It's not my fault if you hurt yourself, but hopefully you don't. I don't want you to, but I'm just covering my bases. Anyway, hiking is great. And usually like when I don't want to burn people out on hiking. Sometimes I think people might hike too much. I never want to get somebody have like just be grinding out the same trails over and over again. And that might just be putting my own like mindset on things. I don't know how people do the same things over and over again. Once in a while you have to, but apart from that time in the gym, or it might be out like on just a neighborhood trail or a route you run on, or maybe you might be on your Peloton or something at home. All those things are options, but cardio is so important because if you're moving slowly in the mountains, that can get dangerous, whether it's losing light or just having more dangerous conditions, if there's ice fall or rock fall hazards. You need to move at a certain speed. That's just reality. You can't go exponentially slow. You have to be able to move fast, and having a really good cardiovascular base is going to be super important. So doing a workout of some sort, preferably cardio more often than not, 5 days a week, if you get 6, that's fantastic. And that's going to be 45 minutes to maybe 90 minutes. And if you have a little hike, that's obviously going to be longer typically. But that'd be maybe once a week. Once in a while, if you're doing a bigger volume thing, you could do a couple like back-to-back hikes, like one on Saturday, one on Sunday, something of that nature. But then also strength training is super important. It's going to help prevent injuries. Doing some stability work, help recover from falls. I have people fall on purpose in my class with step on maybe, I don't know, 16 or 18 inches off the ground. And then I have them stand on one leg, put one leg up and lean forward until they basically are going to fall, and they just catch themselves. And the idea of that is that like if you trip on a trail, you have a reaction to quickly recover on the other foot. So that, and I've literally seen people do that. And then it's funny, I had one person who told me like they were in Greece and they tripped going down some steps of all things. They're carrying their like 4-year-old, and they tripped and they caught themselves, and they're like, gosh darn it, Carl, it was a good thing, but he's like, yeah, he was right. So having those type of things are really good, the neuromuscular training, but strength training 2 days a week, cardiovascular about 5 days a week, and you can do those on the same day. And then some stability training, doing some things on one leg. It doesn't have to be super fancy, but doing some stability work, because we're hiking on one leg at a time. Because you're one foot's on the ground, one foot's not. So having that stability, having some lateral motion is also good. Having some rotation, all these things are really good for you.
That's true. So when you say cardio, it's like more like steady state cardio, or like something like a HIIT format?
Yes. So more often than not in the mountains, I mean, a common thing that's like mountaineering is long periods of boredom with brief moments of terror. And so a lot of steady state cardio is warranted. So, and that's like I tell, and I'll do when I'm programming, I'll have people do a couple to 3 of those a week. And that's going to be that 45 minutes or more of steady state cardio. And I call them boring workouts. It should feel reasonably comfortable. You're working a little bit hard, but it's something where it's kind of boring. You're working on your cardiac output, which to get kind of technical is how much blood your heart pumps with each beat. And if your heart rate is going super fast, there's going to be diminishing returns. It can't fill fully, so you can't have your heart rate too high in order to increase your cardiac output. So the steady state things, and it's a good time to just do some Netflix time, watch a show. And that's where shows come in. They're usually an hour long. So great, you do your episode of your show. You might do warm up, some core work maybe before or after, maybe some mobility work. And that's great. That's a workout. And sometimes it's one where just like it's just a way to get out and just do something and may de-stress a little bit. But yes, on top of that, doing some harder intensity work at least once a week, and preferably twice, would be a good thing too. So, and those intervals can vary. So that usually the method I use are intervals. So, and typically I prefer, if I'm really training somebody hard, is going to be heart rate based intervals. So there's time based intervals and heart rate based intervals. Excuse me. Time based intervals are what people are really aware of. So like usually in a ratio, it's 2 to 1. So you're going to do 2 minutes, maybe moderate pace, and then work really hard for 1, or you can do different ratios. The less rest, the harder it is. But a heart rate based interval is where you're working at a high level for an X amount of time, but you're basing that on heart rate, not the clock, or its combination really. So the clock doesn't start until you hit the heart rate that you're after, usually in that 80, 85%, 90% range. We're going to be working really hard. It's going to be the kind of, I always call it like bargaining in your head, where it's like trying to not quit. It's really, really challenging. So that's going to be so that's going to be usually like you might start with a minute, but you're really getting the 2 or 3 minute efforts at that level, and then recovering down to a heart rate which is much lower, usually in that 120 to 130 range for average middle-aged adult, which I think is our demographic we're probably talking to. Once you hit that recovery heart rate, boom, turn that intensity back up. But you don't start the clock right when you turn the intensity up. You start the clock when you hit the heart rate goal, which might be like that 165 or something of that nature. And you maintain that. And it's okay if you slow down your pace on whatever machine you're on. They say you're on a step mill or a treadmill, you can slow down your pace as long as you maintain that heart rate zone you're looking for. And then once you maintain that for 2 minutes, recover down to that recovery heart rate and back up and forth. So it's not going to be always the same duration for the recovery and the work as far as when the intensity goes up. The intensity goes up, but the clock doesn't start to hit the heart rate. So much more difficult, much more specific to physiology.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like it was super helpful, Carl.
Yeah.
Like I have one more question for both of you. So, what would be the time frame for someone who has been, let's say, a moderately active, who goes to the gym, who does workouts, but not essentially like 5 days of cardio or 2 days of strength training like that, but does reasonably fit, I would say.
Well, I'll give my opinion again. Gunjan, you can give your 2 cents as well, of course. So say we're gonna make a goal of Mount Rainier because it's most familiar for Pacific Northwest and locals watching. But say this person's going to the gym maybe 3 days a week, working out, and they're doing a class once in a while, and they're doing a little bit of weightlifting, just a general fitness workout. I would say a general timeline, if they really dedicate themselves from, okay, they make this goal in January or whatever to like, I'm gonna climb Mount Rainier this summer, and say that's in July. They got 6 or 7 months. That is a reasonable amount of time if they've got a decent base level of fitness and they're dedicated. They have to be really on top of things to get in shape to do a Mount Rainier climb. And it's going to obviously vary because everybody's base level is different. But with that general philosophy, I think 6 to 7 months is reasonable. Somebody in, maybe that's just brand new. Maybe they're struggling, like they can get up Mount Si, but it's a butt kicker. I would say having more of a full year to establish a bigger base of fitness would be so if like right now they say, I really want to climb Mount Rainier. Yeah, let's do that in 2024. Okay. Maybe you can do something more like along the lines of like for this year, a Mount St. Helens or maybe a Mount Adams would be good. Mount Adams is always, especially the south side, is the most common route thought of as non-technical. It's still a pretty damn steep mountain, and you're going up. It's the second highest volcano in Washington, so it's not a joke. So sometimes people underestimate that.
Helens and 2-day climb for Adams would be a better word.
Yeah, but that would be possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with exactly what Carl said. And I would also say, like, if you have a goal of something like the Rainier or something really big, having, some sub goals, like, Adams for Mount Rainier or something are also good yardsticks. Because what happens in some of these big climbs, let's take the example of Rainier, you're normally going with a guiding agency. They've got a lot of folks, and you're part of a rope team, right? And people there are from very different skill sets, and unless you're going with a group that you've trained with, it's expected that you keep up with people. So putting knowing how you will do with elevation, knowing how your body does after a long day on a mountain, and then how does it feel the next day when you have to wake up and go for a summit push. Those are some things that will build your own confidence, to now go on a rope team and go with a bunch of strangers on a big mountain. So I would say, give ample time to training. A lot of times, we're in a hurry. We think, it's this year or never, but that's never the case, right? You gotta get both physically and mentally ready before you go and attempt something really hard.
Yeah, I agree. Like something like this involves both physically and mentally getting ready for it. Even it's like sometimes the mental challenge you have to overcome, that be it fear or be it like some small struggle, if you have to overcome that to face it. So yeah, absolutely agree with you.
And that's actually one of the things, like just going back to the intervals, that is just as much a mind game or mind exercise as it is a physical. There's obviously a physical component, but having the stick-to-itiveness to get through those things, or a hard hike, and then doing the practice hikes or whatever, and there's a certain amount of suffering that you have to endure. And then I think sometimes I've talked to lots of people over the years where it's just it's just a walk up, because you're not using ice tools or something of that nature, or climbing vertical rock on a Mount Rainier or something. It's like, you're underestimating. I've seen people do it a lot. They think they hear something where they might be listening to a very advanced climber or guide talk, he's like talking about like it's no big deal because it's no big deal for them, but it is a big deal for just about everybody, and so it shouldn't be underestimated.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So this leads to me another question, like, what do you think, Gunjan, like about, so I've seen people with not much experience going even without a guides. So what is your take on it? Like, how important is it to have a good guiding company for you to go on, especially if when you are a beginner?
I think, yeah, it takes a few years before you have the skills to climb a mountain like Rainier without a guide. Not most of the time, right? Nothing happens on the mountain.
Mm,
But if you're going without a guide, you need to be prepared that if something happens, you have the skills to not put yourself or others who are with you in danger,
yeah,
right? It's
absolutely.
not even Mount Rainier. There are people, even, up to Camure. There are
Yeah.
people, like I have a very close friend who got lost in a whiteout. He was rescued. He literally died and came back to life. Don't ask me how, but that happened with him. And he was one of those people who was a very strong hiker. He was physically very fit. He went to Camure with a snowboarder.
Mhm.
He didn't have the navigation skills
Yeah.
for a whiteout. He was hiking down. The snowboarder snowboarded down. They got separated,
Yeah.
and he got stuck in. So I would say, like, give the mountain respect,
Absolutely.
um, learn the skills, and I don't say that there are people who can't do it. Everybody can do
Mhm.
it, but it
Just
takes
have to develop the
learning.
skills.
You have to give time to develop those skills,
Yeah.
and you need to, the thing is, the first time you'll be in a whiteout, you
Mhm.
wouldn't know what to do, but you can walk down Camure in a whiteout without, like, you
Yeah.
can, but you
Plus,
need to know how to do it.
there's a lot more to the bigger mountains than just the physical conditioning. Mental is bigger, and there is also other skills like navigation skills or like avalanche terrains and all those stuff as well. So if you're a beginner, like especially for the bigger mountains, it's better to have a guide unless you know what you're doing. It's yeah.
Exactly. And
That,
also,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was saying, you brought up avalanche rescue. And so, for example, I did my first ARI level 1 class when I used to snowshoe.
Mm,
A lot of times, snowshoers think that they don't
yeah.
need that. They don't need that knowledge. Everybody, if you're going out in the snow, you need to understand the snow. And a lot of times, you'll see a lot of these groups go out with skiers, but there are groups that go out with snowboarders. So not snowboarders, snowshoers.
No shoes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, skills are very, very important.
Yeah, develop the knowledge before you can explore some things, right?
Yeah, I was going to go back to me saying people underestimate things, and that's sometimes because they hear the story of how easy it was, not because it's physically easy, but because everything went perfectly right, and so
Mm,
they underestimate it. And I have a friend who works for Rainier National Park, and I was up there for a climb, and I saw this an adult and then probably a late teenager, maybe early 20 person arrive at camp. They were asking questions about where to set up their tent, and I said, well, you should check in with the Rangers or whatever. But I'm like sitting there, I can see their gear. I'm like, oh dear Lord. Because they had like ropes that they looked like they bought at Harbor Freight. So like, probably $10 cheap nylon ropes, like construction hard helmets. I'm like, oh God,
wow.
this is a disaster waiting to happen. And so I went over to my buddy and said, hey, you might want to go have a chat with these guys over there and just kind of, he's really good with people. And he told me, tries to help them find the no, as in not KNO, like, no, we shouldn't do this, and
Yeah.
like talking them out of it because it was not a good idea for them to go up with the equipment they had. And obviously, if they're buying that type of equipment and using that, they don't know what the heck they're doing, and
Yeah.
it's going to be put them in danger, but then also rescuers in danger, and then going to like underestimating things too. the friend who's on Everest right now, he had to help somebody down mailbox not too long ago. Who was they were frozen. They were kind of in a state of shock because they were scared because of the little bit of
Yeah.
exposure on mailbox, and they're sitting in the snow, had very little equipment or clothing, and he got them down to pass the snow, and then got their phone number, or gave them their phone number to make sure they got okay, because he wasn't going to wait with them all day, but he got them to a safe spot so they can self-rescue from there. But the amount of rescues that have happened in the Seattle area since COVID, with people just going out and doing what they think they could on the trails, the rescues from Seattle mountain rescue have gone up exponentially.
Yeah. I think 2 or 3 weeks back, there was a SAR team in mailbox to rescue someone who couldn't come down the mountain
Yeah.
because they were like scared to come down in the snow.
Yep.
So yeah, I hear you on that one.
That's irresponsible.
Yeah, you have to be aware of what you're getting yourself into. That's true. So moving on to the gears, like what are some basic gears you'll be needing? Like, could you talk about that, Gunjan?
Okay, so again, let's talk about Mount Rainier as an example. It's easy to talk about gear if you know the objective. So a lot of climbs on Mount Rainier happen in the summer. So avalanche gear, for example, the beacon probe, etc., you carry them up to spring, and then for summer climbs, we normally do not need to carry those. But spring, it's still very important to have those. And when I say spring, it goes up to June. Then you need the snow gear, right? Crampons, ice axe, mountaineering boots. Even when you're a new climber, I do recommend, even if you're going up to Camp Muir, you do wear mountaineering boots. They will, it's important. Then adequate clothing, right? We always say, like, you need a hard shell, a soft shell, and a fleece in terms of layers, along with the base layer. You need, if you're going overnight, you need, the tent and the sleeping bag and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of gear investment that happens, even if all you're doing is climbing one mountain. Again,
but these are also available to rent as well.
Yes,
right?
almost everything is available to rent, especially if you're going with one of the guiding services. They have the rentals available even for your clothes. Like, you can have, like, even you can get a parka. Yeah, you can, rent a parka through them and all of that. And yeah, I would say that would cover.
I'll add to that a little bit if it's okay. We're going to start out with a first aid kit. I mean, you can think of, like, anybody who's listening can look up the 10 essentials, and that's going to be general, but you can look up that as a starting guideline. Again, we're using Mount Rainier as an example. One of the things that's super important that Gunjan kind of mentioned, but is I think she did, but a big puffy jacket, so down insulated jacket. And it's not. I've had people climb and say, "Oh, I've got this warm ski jacket." I'm like, nope, not good enough. I guarantee it. And they don't want to spend the money. I'm buying one for sure, because it might be $400, $500 or something. It's not cheap, but you can rent it, and it's going to be like, I don't know, $40. It's worth every penny, and it's going to keep you alive if there's an emergency. And when you stop at rest breaks, it's the first thing you put on, because you built up heat hiking, but it goes away like that. And you put that jacket on. Hopefully you've got it, if you're a real pro, you've got your water bottle in there, and you've got some snacks in the pocket already loaded up. And before you go, you reload for the next break. And so you're all set. So you put it on, everything's ready for you. That is so essential. Helmet, and then there's technical. So helmet would be another thing that'd be in there. Harness and beaners. If you're going guided, sometimes they have some of these components as well. I'm not sure. I think RMI always provided harnesses and
some of the guiding companies.
Alpine sometimes wants you to bring like 3 lockers or something. So it's not a huge investment, but you can get a good harness for like $60, I think. I haven't bought one in a couple of years, but anyway. But those things are necessary too. But like the renting thing, I always tell people, you can rent just about everything but your underwear. So there's an option. It's going to be somewhere in between that and buying some things and living in the Pacific Northwest. The rain shell, the soft shell, those things, even the rain pants can be valuable if you're sitting at your kid's soccer game and it's cold. It could be a good
That's true.
investment for you to use somewhere else in life.
Yeah.
So all those things are rentable, and knowing how to use them. Ice axe is probably the most critical thing to know how to use. Getting some proper training on that. If you're going guided, they're going to do that for sure. But there's other ways to do it, and having a good mentor or friend that is skilled, and they're skilled from not just them telling you about it, but they've done through classes or their experience. They give you your resume, so you kind of know. Having those good partners, we were talking about community. It's tough to find because it's a matter of having the same risk tolerance, and then hopefully a general or similar fitness level and similar objectives and similar mindset, and also having the lack of fear of communication, because sometimes you're going to butt heads on the mountain because of disagreements for which way to go or how to do something, and you need to get through that and figure it out, and still hopefully be friends afterwards, because you have to have a lot of honesty to be safe, and so that's something to relate to.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing to the last point that Carl made. And everybody on the mountain has a voice, right? So if you're in a group and you think you're less experienced than others, but you worried about something, you have a voice and you need to speak up. Like everybody, it's better to talk about anything that's worrying you or that's coming to your mind. It's important for the leader, whoever is, if you're in a group, even if you're with a guide, to know exactly how you're feeling, right? It could be because the decisions get taken as a group, right? Especially if you're not going with a guide, if you're going in a community or with a group, the decisions get taken as a group. Second, if you're feeling something, even when you're with a guide and you share that, it helps them assess, what you're comfortable doing, what help you need to go further. So keeping quiet, a lot of people think, they have a niggle, right? A physical niggle, and they think it'll pass.
That's
and
true. You try to push through it, and then
yes, and
a point it's like too beyond. Like you cannot come back, Rita. There wouldn't be a point where we could fix it or change things.
Yes. So everybody on the mountain needs to have a voice, and you need to talk about your niggles, and you need to talk about what's happening, because that's how everybody stays safe. If you're injured and you're hiding it from the rest of the group, it's not safe for anyone.
That is absolutely true. Yeah. So one last question for you guys. So what was the toughest part when you initially trained? Which was a bigger hurdle for you to come across? When you initially started?
I can go first. For me, it was, I was very scared of just steep slopes, snow slopes, steep slopes. And I had to kind of learn how to be comfortable with that, how to, first walk down, a steep slope, or, eventually ski down a steep slope. But for me, getting over my mental fears that were very deep, right, was the toughest challenge. The physical and the other skills was easier, but getting to a point that I'm not scared of anything was the hardest thing to get to.
Yeah, I think for me as well, it's the same. I have the fear of heights. So for me to go on these mountains was a huge thing, especially when I come down, it doesn't hurt for me or anything when I come down, by mentally I have to prepare myself to get down initially. I still do that, but I think I have practicing it more, I've become a little more comfortable. But I hear you. I have the huge fear of heights, and that is something which was really hard for me. Yeah. What about you, Carl?
Physically, I was always fairly strong in the mountains, and I have a deep respect for heights and things of that nature, but I want to say I don't have a great fear of them. I deal with them. And there's times where there's a pucker factor where like you're like, oh, the exposure can get to you, but you have to try to go into it and just you find some enjoyment in it, and then overcoming it, and you work through it mentally. So that was never a huge thing for me. I did swear a blue streak the first time I got on skis. It was pretty ugly. So I was mad because I get frustrated when I can't do something physically. But got past that. I'm a pretty good skier now, and I love it. Probably the thing that was most difficult for me is actually more on the technical side of doing some of the navigation training, like as far as like really getting into some of the map reading skills and like correlating the map, what's flat on the map to what I'm seeing out in the world. And like my friend and I we made an attempt on Whitehorse, which is I'd say super advanced hike. It's also, there's some alpinism there too. The first time we tried to climb it, we were off route, and this is after me flying around it with a friend in his plane and like thinking like to try to get some aerial objectives, and we made a critical error of we followed somebody's footsteps, and it looked like we thought we were going to Lone Tree Pass, which we thought, and because there was one tree, and it seemed like there were some raft lines down, like, okay, because it's steeper at this time of year, it's kind of late in the season for it. We wrapped down this thing, and we kept on hiking around and trying to, it seemed like it was making sense until we realized we're looking at the wrong mountain, and we were on Whitehorse, but we're looking at Baker instead of Rainier, and we were looking north instead of south. So we had to go back up this thing. And I do claim a first ascent on what I call Ass Crack Gully, because we had to go back up this thing we wrapped down, and it was probably not the safest thing I've done. But then we finally got en route, but by the time we got to where we were going, we made a decision to turn around, because we could have summited, but it was gonna be an epic long day finishing in the dark. So we came back a couple of years later and did it right. It was a much better experience, but it was a mistake in thinking you're absolutely right on navigation. And this came in that was just a few years ago, but learning early, it was definitely difficult. But it continued where you get overconfident and you think you know where you're going if you don't have a clear view, and you're wrong, and then you just lock. I personally can sometimes get locked into that. This feels so right, but I should sometimes trust your technology, or really double check, make sure you're looking at all different angles of where you're going if you have any doubt in navigation. So that's probably my biggest challenge.
That's great to know. Like, yeah, I'm still like learning in the process. I'm in the navigation. Yeah. Gunjan, do you have anything to add?
No, I just wanted to add to what Carl was saying, not just that's a lesson in, in whatever he was saying, there's another hidden lesson, which is it's okay to kind of come back to the car, right? Even without the summit. It's always okay to come back to the car without the summit. The summit is optional. Getting back to the car is not optional. So, and that's something that, as you're getting, when you're hiking, yes, there are some slightly technical hikes, and, you could, get lost or something, but as you start climbing, as you start getting into bigger objectives, I mean, remembering that, the summit is not important, having a group where you all agree on what is important before you head out, and, making sure that you're taking safe decisions, even if it's slowing you down, even if it's getting you back to the car.
Yeah, that is definitely true. Like, always it's more important to get to the car than to the summit. I completely agree there. Yes. So do you guys have any other tips or that you would like to share with the audience?
I think what Gunjan said was really important, because it'll be there. So knowing when to throw in the towel is important. And there's also, at the same time, the other half of that is knowing when to push through a difficult part is also important, and those can weigh against each other. It can be a really a challenge to know which one's right in the situation, and sometimes it's not as bad as you think it will be. Reinhold Messner, in a talk I saw him talk about fear, and so say it's an exposure thing, and like here's an example is crossing a ladder on Mount Rainier. So there's sometimes ladders that the guide service or the park service puts over a crevasse, and it's usually 3 or 4 steps to get that you're walking. And there's usually a hand line to give you some stability. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're over. It's just like walking down the street technically, but people will freeze there, and the longer they stand there, the more that fear will build, and it gets worse and worse. It's paralyzing. And if you just sometimes you just have to go. Sometimes speed is your friend. Just go. Don't think about it. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're across. But sometimes little things aren't as big as they might seem. So just be mindful of that, but also know when your limits are, and be mindful of others that you might be affecting.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Gunjan, do you have any other tips?
No, I would just say if you want to climb mountains, go climb mountains. They're beautiful, but work for them, right? Get the physical, mental, and technical skills before you do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna add one more thing, because I had somebody I was on Mount Adams with that we had just gotten up to climb, and I point out, hey, look at this, look at the stars, because the stars are just absolutely amazing. It's a clear night, and she's like, oh yeah, stars. All she happened to be thinking about was getting to the summit, and I was like, oh my god, like, because she was not enjoying the journey at all. It was brutal. This is also the person that packed a hammer to hammer in her tent stakes, though. So packing a hammer up to lunch counter on Mount Adams is brutal when there's like 1,000 million rocks around. You can use a hammer in your tent stake. So anyway, yeah, it was an adventure. Well,
Wow.
That's an interesting story. Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much, guys, for educating us today. It was really helpful to know all the angles from Carl for how to train, and your experience, Kunjan, was really helpful. And just to close out, I have a few things to say. I know how hard it is to find the right partners and the right community. Uh, I think we have a community like Adventure for Everyone. This essentially, we have a lot of people who like to hike, climb, or anything outdoor sports. So we are here to help you and support you in your mountaineering adventure. And Adventure Tripper also has snow skills course to learn about the basic snow skills, where you learn how to walk in the snow, how to do your self-arrest, and how to use the ice axe and crampons and such things. And to begin with, if you want to tackle some smaller mountains, we have Helen's guided climb and Adam's guided climb. And then you can progress to Baker climb. We also have some options in Baker where we do a 2 or 3 day climb. And then there's this Rainier prep course where essentially you learn everything over a period of 4 to 5 days, where you learn the snow skills, then you learn about the crevasse rescue and the different knots and how to walk in a rope team and the basic stuff. So you can go and climb other mountains. There are other glacier mountain, not glacier, but snowy mountains like Mount Ruth in Mount Rainier, and there are quite a few mountains that you need mountaineering skills to enjoy. So definitely look up for that. And if you are interested in other climbs out of Washington, we do have Mount Hood and Mount Shasta, if that interests you. And so I think that's about it from me. Thank you so much, guys. It was really nice to have you all. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you.